And then Jason Scheer, who has been all over it and took a bunch of arrows and darts and even grenades that were sent his way as he's reported this story about the Pac-12. And here we are today with the meeting, which he, of course, had when he had the information first yesterday. Jason, thanks for your time. So what do you know about any specific details, if anything, or roundabout figures of what's going on?
Yeah, so I heard that basically today at the meeting, the number was in the low 20s. I've heard anywhere from 20 to 22 was the highest number. The biggest thing is that Apple, it's with Apple, and it basically is being presented as, yeah, look, your base is 22. Let's just pick the higher number. Your base is 22, but if you get a certain amount of subscriptions, it could go all the way up to whatever. Like, there's no cap on it, and that's how it's being sold by George Kliavkoff. Is basically like, yeah, the base number isn't as high, but we have the potential to get much higher.
So, Jason, why would anybody take that deal unless they had no other options?
And to me, I don't know. And then what a source told me is the deal is not, in exact wording was, the deal is not good enough for the school with options. And basically, you wouldn't take that deal because even if you're being, if you think at the maximum, there's so much that would have to go into you maximizing that deal with subscriptions, etc. And then I don't understand how a college could budget that. That's one of the concerns that was brought up to me, is that money is fluctuating. And so it's very difficult to be able to budget an athletic department basically based on an unknown amount of money. I think this is that good of a deal. You would have had positive leaks coming from the Pac-12 and you would have had a more positive outlook than basically all the reports are like, hey, we're going to hold another meeting eventually.
So, Jason, let's say the number's 22. Who knows? But let's just say it's 22 million as a base. And then the subscriptions, incentives, whatever the wording or lingo might be. Can it, if in fact they were to do pretty well, it's going to be a hell of a conference this year, lots of Heisman Trophy type figures, names, stars. Do you have, in the past, has that moved the needle before? And could it actually end up being a better number than what we've heard about with the Big 12, but a lot of streaming?
I would be really surprised if it ever reached that Big 12 number. I mean, the rumor is it's $1 per subscription. That's been the rumor. So you would have to come up with an insane number because then you're splitting the money. And that's something we also don't know is how many schools Apple has agreed to. Is it 10 schools? Is it 12 schools? We don't know that number. That's something that I haven't been able to find out. And is there any linear whatsoever? I mean, because you have to think, even if they sub-license games, how much is that going to be worth? Because Apple isn't going to give any of their best games to, say, an ESPN or a Fox or anything like that. They're Apple. They're going to keep all their top content. And so it's difficult for me to see a scenario that they could reach the Big 12. And remember, that's 31-7 with the Big 12. That's their base. So even if everything went right and you reach the Big 12's number of 31-7, you've just reached their base. You haven't actually reached what the Big 12 is getting.
So, Jason, how quickly do you believe that Utah will move if they've made the decision to leave the conference?
Yeah, that's something I can't get an answer to. I know that Arizona's gone dark. The Arizona Board of Regents representatives are not responding to anyone. Hickey and Robbins have not responded to anyone. That's why there's no quotes up there right now. The meeting is kind of up in the air. No one knows exactly how detailed the Board of Regents meeting will be tonight. Do I think something happens in 24 hours? Probably not. But I also wouldn't be shocked. I think we'll get a better idea. There's probably going to be some leaks to report after the Board of Regents meeting. I don't think anything is necessarily imminent in the next 24 hours, but, you never know.
All right, so you say 24 hours. Do you feel like, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, because we don't know how long these take, and you've even said this could be a day or two or it could be 3 or 4 weeks. Do you feel like there's any chance by the end of the week that Arizona – I guess, apt yes than no, that they'll be a part or at least enter or want an invitation to the Big 12?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll get announced, but I think we're headed in the direction where Arizona is heavily leaning towards the Big 12 right now. I tweeted a while ago that Robbins has said on record to CBS before that the maximum amount of streaming he would take is 50%. This deal presented today is way more than 50%. There's not enough money involved. It basically went against everything that he said that he wanted. And I don't think it's going to be better. He's smart enough to realize if the Pac-12 Commission is buying time. I believe that it is more likely than not at this point that Arizona will move towards the Big 12. Again, this stuff is so fluid and all that. I'm not guaranteeing anything's going to happen, but I do believe we're headed in that direction.
So, is there anything about what you've learned today about the deal that made you say, hey, that's not bad?
To be honest, no. There really isn't. And, maybe the 22, I guess if you say that the number, I've heard from a few people that it was closer to 22 than 20. I mean, that, $2 million, I guess, would be a benefit. But even then, that number is just too low. The linear part, the fact that it's almost all streaming, that's too much. It's not. I'll say this. We know that there's some Pac-12 writers that are trying to put everything positive they can out about the Pac-12, and they've been quiet for the most part today. And if there was something, I believe it was your Mark even said, or maybe a second in command, that if we had good news regarding our deal, we'd be yelling it to the rooftops, right? And no one has said anything about any positive aspect of this deal that was presented today.
And to make sure, we also sometimes think we take for granted, don't we, Paul and Jason, that we everyone knows the story from the beginning. If you don't have linear, like a nice solid amount of linear, ESPN and or Fox, you lose the ability to be promoted. Isn't that one of the things you miss, other than the fact people could watch you easier?
Yeah, I mean, it is a massive hit to the brand, right? How are you promoting? You turn on ESPN and you're getting promotions for every game. During games, they're mentioning you're at the next game and all that, and all these other channels. Apple, although they have a ton of money and all that, your brand is taking a hit. It's just not as visible as it would be. And if you could come up with some sort of equal distribution where some of it's streaming and then others linear, you're fine. You could live with that. But to have, let's say, 80% streaming, it absolutely kills your brand, in my opinion.
What is the Big 12? One ESPN Plus game a weekend in football? Is that right? Am I right there?
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. So, Jason, how do you think this has changed the temperature for some of the schools that are Pac-12 till we die?
I think if you're ASU in Utah, you have to sit down and really seriously consider your future. That this was a bit of okay, this is the best we've got. It's August 1st, the season's coming. How is this deal going to get better? That's the thing also is, is there any way that this deal can be approved on? And people forget with Apple. Apple was going to sign an agreement with the NFL. I mean, it was very close. So then Apple basically said, you know what, never mind. For all we know, they're going to do the same with the Pac-12. Nothing is finalized with Apple until it's finalized. And you have to decide, my guess is part of the pitch that I've heard is basically Pac-12 is commission saying, look, in 2030, everyone's going to want to be on streaming, but we're going to be the first ones there. And we may take a hit now, but everyone will want to be where we are. And you either believe that or you don't. And if you believe that, you say to yourself, we're willing to take that hit and to try to come out, better in 2030 in the next cycle, or you go to the Big 12.
Here's a note on the chat room, if you don't mind me, Jason. This is from Aaron Gillespie. Why would Nike, who, of course, we know that they basically back Oregon to the hilt, why would they want any limited exposure for their brand?
Yeah, I don't think they do. I think they would want full exposure. It's just a matter of how much say they have in the process. I mean, when this all started, everyone just assumed that Phil Knight would write a check and get Oregon in the Big Ten. And it hasn't happened. He hasn't been as involved as people thought he would be for whatever reason. He's kind of taken a back seat there. And maybe Oregon, the brand, just kind of isn't what people think it is in terms of Nike and all that. But it hasn't been. They haven't been as vocal, and that's another thing I'm curious. What does Oregon and Washington do? Do they have no choice but to sign this deal? And how do you sign this deal with uneven revenue sharing? I mean, you got to be crazy to do that. And if you're at Oregon State or Washington State or whatever, even though you have no choice, and even if you're Arizona, is it 22.5, or is Oregon and Washington taking a chunk of that? And there's just so many factors at play right now.
All right, Jason Scheer, Wildcat Authority, with us on 365 Sports.
So, Jason, how much sleep do you expect to get the next, 96 hours?
I was stupid last night, and I stayed up and watched the soccer game, and then I woke up at 6:30, so I got a solid 3 hours of sleep last night. Well, We'll know more. We'll know more after the meeting. I think there's a lot of rumors and a lot of, it's hard to chase them all down. Some of them are probably reliable, but I like to double and triple check, and that takes time. So probably not much, but I'm ready whatever happens. I'll be ready.
So one of the other things about Apple is that who they are now, which is a monster, right? But is there a chance that at some point this could be, and I'm just trying to get all the angles, and Dennis just put this up, that CBS or Paramount CBS or CW might eventually be gobbled up by Apple, and then all of a sudden that's part of a deal?
I mean, it's possible, but the problem is, again, same thing with the subscription numbers. You're betting on something you don't know. And basically you're guessing and you're betting and you're trying to get lucky. Because you could say, yeah, maybe Apple's going to buy this, or maybe they'll combine with ESPN and all that, but you don't know that for a fact. And so you're basing that on it's going to happen, and maybe that's being pitched to you, but at the end of the day, you don't have those numbers and you don't have that guarantee.
Jason, two things stick out to me here. I mentioned this at the top of our show. One, ask the actors and screenwriters right now how forthcoming the streamers are with their numbers when it comes to paying you your money. One. And two, it is not the Pac-12's job to sell the Apple TV Plus. It is Apple's job to do that. So if Apple isn't doing a good enough job of that on the Pac-12's end, they're putting a lot of faith in Apple to, be able to sell their brand. That's a leap.
You're basically putting the future of your conference into Apple's hands, because if it goes poorly, and remember, this is the same thing that they did with Larry Scott and the Pac-12 Network. Mm-hmm. Larry Scott sold the Pac-12 Network based on subscriptions and said, look, we're going to get subs, we're going to break it out off, and we're all going to get rich. And it failed miserably. And that's one of the reasons, it's hard for me to believe that the school presidents, and I know Apple's different, but you're basically making the same choice all over again, basing your athletic funding off subscriptions. And you're right. If Apple doesn't feel like putting in a certain amount of money, and that could be part of the agreement, we'll put in X amount of money per year advertising. I don't know. But if they don't, and that's not part of the agreement, they may just sit back and say, look, we'll pay you your 22 and a half. We'll throw a little bit more for advertising, and we win in this because we didn't really pay that much money.
Is there anything tied to the number of teams that have to be a part of the conference with any kind of a deal, or the length of the deal, or the money involved?
Yeah, that I have not heard. I've been chasing that. The rumor is that Apple will be able to pay, or will pay, for up to 12 schools, but that's something I haven't been able to confirm with enough people.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that I saw on Twitter, because there's always the immediate. You mentioned the response of those who cover the conference, or even nationally college football. This line was interesting about the deal and all that. Executives left the hour-long meeting with no agreement, we know that, but with the expectation of eventually concluding a deal. Now, I asked Ross Dellinger, who's the one who put that up, does that mean they're kicking the can down the road, or does that mean that everyone kind of liked what they saw? And his answer to me was basically, I have no idea. That's just something that he, I guess, put up. And the other one was, Jason, have you heard one person attached to the Pac-12, anybody, not just Robbins or Arizona or whoever else you talked to, that thought today was a positive day in any way?
The first thing with Ross, and I like Ross a lot, I don't think anyone knows. I do not get the impression at all that they are close to signing a deal. Today was the presentation, and I don't get because the thing is, if they were going to sign it, it would have been signed. Why would they wait? Why wouldn't they verbally agree? We know that the Big 12 deal leaked. We know that the Big 10 deal leaked weeks before it was actually finalized. I'm confident in saying that if they came to a verbal agreement of some sort today, we would know. That if today's meeting went well, we would know. Whether it's an unnamed source or a Pac-12 representative or whatever it be, they were very quick to talk after Colorado, and unnamed Pac-12 representative and all that, but not one Pac-12 person has said anything. Ross mentioned that there's another meeting, but notice no one actually knows when that next meeting is scheduled for. It feels like a delay tactic by George, and I'm sure the presidents realize that as well. But I just can't see a situation where today's meeting went awesome and we just haven't heard it.
Why was the meeting today? Was it the August 1st note, that date? Because we've seen so many timelines along the way. And Jason, we're letting you go because I know you have other things to do besides be on with us, but we've enjoyed the relationship. Why today?
From what I understand, the Pac-12 president said we need to see the numbers. And it was as simple as that. I don't know if George even wanted to show what he showed today, but he didn't have a choice. Yeah, I mean, there's no way, right? Like, why would you show a bad deal?
Yeah,
and it's been a year, and he hasn't shown a deal. So why would the first deal he showed be bad? I get the vibe, and it's been insinuated to me that basically the president said, you need to show us what you have, no matter how bad or good it is. We need the numbers right now.
No matter what, just show us. And I don't think these numbers would have kept Colorado engaged with the Pac-12 had they come out about a week ago. Jason, continue doing what you do. We appreciate your time as always. And who knows, maybe tomorrow or by Friday or maybe not. But the possibility of the Big 12 growing one more team in 2024, and perhaps that's Arizona or somebody else or more. Thanks for your time, buddy. Great job.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Jason Scheer, Wildcat Authority, with a lot of different things that he brought up and answered and